Welcome to the Extraordinary Podcast, where we identify God's uncommon work in common life. Recognizing God's work requires intentionality, but articulating it motivates and inspires. Don't forget to subscribe to never miss an episode. In today's episode, I have a conversation with Tom Pross as he shares how he came to know Jesus later in life and how Jesus changed him. But also the fact that it's not in the past that what matters. It's what Jesus is doing in your life, how he's working in your life now, and what he's going to do into the future that's important. So let's get into the conversation today. Tom, thank you for being a guest on our podcast. We appreciate you taking time to share a little bit about you and your story. As we begin, can you share a little bit about your background? Where'd you grow up? Siblings, home life, any church background?
I grew up I was born in Waterloo. In the late 80s, or middle 80s, we moved to Mount Pleasant, Iowa. And my mom remarried in 1978. And my dad lived in Mount Pleasant. And then we moved a lot. We moved to several different towns. I mean, it was like every month or 6 months we was moving for some reason or another. So I had a lot of different schools I went to and stuff. And I have five brothers and sisters, 3 brothers, 2 sisters. We just don't see each other. Time passed and, we just don't see each other any. I lived in Mount Pleasant for many years. I've worked at Walmart Warehouse. I was general manager of Hardee's for a lot of years. And then I went to Walmart Warehouse, and then I've worked at different factories over the years.
Do you have a favorite job?
My favorite job was actually out here at Borgie here in West Burlington. It wasn't the best paying job, but you just got treated with respect, and the insurance was great. So it was a pretty good job. Then I had my stroke, and that deleted that.
Yeah. Well, that's unfortunate with health concerns getting in the way of those enforced life changes. But you kind of speak to the importance of culture at the job and the atmosphere.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily the total compensation that made it.
Yeah, the atmosphere and the way he was treated just made it for me. I didn't really, the pay was nice. You could get a lot of hours, a lot of overtime. But just the way he was treated. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a good reminder for us of making sure we have a positive culture and atmosphere, whether it's personally, professionally, wherever that is, just to stress the importance of that. Now, can you share with us part of your spiritual journey, particularly when did Jesus become serious in your life?
I was 42 years old, I think, when I found Christ. My ex-wife and daughter, my daughter and I actually went to a Baptist church in Mount Pleasant because we wanted to join her into the youth group. Mm-hmm. And she says, "Dad, I want you to go with me." So I went with her. I had no intentions of really becoming religious or that mumbo jumbo as I called it back then. But the men that met me were nice. They took me in and they really cultured me. My ex-wife wouldn't have anything to do with Christ. She wasn't an atheist, but she hated God with a passion. So that was just a bad subject in our house. We didn't tread that. We didn't go through that at all. And I just continued to go to church. And the men would pray for her and and everybody would. And then just one day she decided to get up and go to church. And she found Christ too, and we all 3 were baptized on the same day.
Oh.
And life went on. I drifted away from church, and then my marriage didn't last. And if you're divorced, it's hard to find a church. The saying of "come in and Jesus loves you," that doesn't mean that the people are going to accept the fact that your marriage didn't make it. And I just couldn't find the right church. And then I came here, and the backstory of that is my son actually came here years ago. And I came here, and nobody cared about my marital status or my health issues, or, health issues. I mean,
nobody held any of that against you.
Nobody held it against me. Nobody really picked at my personal life. Nobody came up and said, "Is this your wife?" And me and my girlfriend come here, Debbie, and they accept her as like, it's just a different feeling to know that people actually care about you through Christ. People are more worried about my spiritual journey than where I live or what my past was.
Sorry, did I cut you off there?
No.
Oh, and I think it's important to remember of we all have a past. No matter who you are, no matter how perfect your life may seem, we still have a past that has sin, that has something in it. And Jesus knows all of our past, but he still wants us. And
right.
So we need to treat people in the same way that Jesus treats us.
I wish, and I'm not putting down any denomination or anything, but not all churches feel that way. The church that I went to, I've never been able to go back to because I'm divorced now, so I would never help do anything there.
Well, that's frustrating when we face condemnation from others.
It is, because they don't know really what happened. They don't know what the circumstances were. They don't know my personal life, my walk with Jesus. They don't really care about, and it was refreshing to find the Nazarene church was like that.
Oh, okay. Now you mentioned your son.
My son.
He attended here when he was younger. Your son has ministry experience. Can you share a little bit about what he does?
My son is actually a lead pastor at Green Mound over in Trenton. But he don't choose to do ministry full time. He's actually a middle school teacher. Mm-hmm. And the thing behind him is he's a doctor. He got his doctorate. But as far as me seeing that, I never thought that was going to happen. Roger came to this church, and Mark Watterson and Joel Clover and Pastor Vance took him under his wing. And I don't know, I'm not going to speak ill of Roger, but God changed Roger 180%. Because Roger was he was a drinker. He was very rough. I was actually told at one time at my old church, my boys were too rough to attend. Mm. I didn't raise Christian boys because they were adults when I found Christ. I raised tough men. I one of the toughest men in the room. That's what they were. And Roger come here. He was having some spiritual problems. Found Christ. Found his calling. And he told me one day, he says, "Dad, I'm going to become a minister. I'm going to go into ministry." I said, "Well, I wish you luck with that, but God's going to have to change you a lot." And I just didn't see it. I seen a drinker. I seen his path that he was on then. And the guys held him up when he was having a bad time. They helped him find Christ. He was baptized at this church. And my most proud moment of him was when he was baptized. Mm-hmm. Out of everything he done, he gave his life openly to Christ. And that made me so proud of him.
But he shows another example of it's not what your past, what happened in your past that's important. It's what Jesus is doing now and what Jesus is doing in the future. And not that we ignore the past, but we don't hold past against ourselves because Jesus can transform us.
Right.
And Roger's a perfect example of that.
Yeah. And I have two sons. One's a pastor and one is an inmate at Anamosa State Penitentiary. He's not ready for society. He's not touched Christ. He hasn't found Christ. Someday he will. I pray for him every night. But I have one son that's a pastor and one son, and it's just, God hasn't made it in Tim's life yet. Mm-hmm. But I could see both my sons being that way if God wouldn't have intervened.
Yeah, that's it's powerful to remember what God has done for us, because that can inspire us and encourage us in our current circumstances. And kind of speaking of that, you have faced your share of life's difficulties.
I definitely have.
You alluded earlier to a stroke that essentially forced retirement, but you've had other difficulties. Can you share a little bit about what has helped you persevere through those difficulties?
Just knowing that Christ is with me at all times. Some people say my doctor, my neurologist are very irritated because I don't worry. I let Christ have it. I can't explain to them because I don't share our faith. But I have a rare disease that causes me to have strokes. And this last stroke I had wasn't bad. But another one's lurking. But I don't sit and dwell on that because God has it all written out already. He has our plan already done. He gave Christ for us to worry. And they say, you're just rah-rah. No, I'm really not. I just have enough faith in God to know that if I fall ill or if my time's done next week, Pastor, that's what God wants. Why worry about it? I mean, I irritate a lot of my family with it too, but it's just my faith. I just gave it to God. And my first stroke, I felt sorry for myself, and I've just given it to God now.
How old were you when you had your first stroke?
I was 47, I believe.
So awfully young.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There's not a good age to have a stroke. That's not what
there's
I'm saying.
definitely not.
But 47 is young to be forced to have such life-altering changes in your life. And so you face difficulties with other health concerns. And you mentioned marriage struggles. So as you're thinking about the difficulties that you've faced in life, I'm sure that there are people that have helped support you in positive ways. And I love exploring this because everybody's different and we can gain new insights for how we can be supportive of others. What positive ways have people helped you and supported you when you face difficulties?
This last time Debbie came and stayed, we don't live together, my girlfriend and I. We won't till we're married. But she came and stayed with me for 2 months because I do raise my granddaughter, who's 4 now. And then we have her little sister, who was taken away from her. And we have both girls staying with me and my roommates. And Debbie came and stayed with us. You actually called me several times to ask, which blew me away because my first stroke, I had nobody in the church reach out to me. So, and then when I come to church, people are always supportive. Hey, I'm glad to see you're getting better. Glad to see you're doing good. We're praying for you. And just some words, we're praying for you, means a lot. Because I know the doctors have something, God gives them the knowledge, but the prayer is where you heal. Mm-hmm. And I went from a walker to a cane to be able to walk again through God's grace. If he wasn't with me, I wouldn't be where I am now.
Now, you mentioned that this most recent stroke was not a bad stroke, but it still caused significant limitations for you for 6-8 weeks?
Yeah.
Somewhere in there where you said you went from a walker to a cane, and it was, I want to make sure we're not downplaying it. Strokes can be devastating and changes without recovery, but it still caused significant hardship. And so, but kind of what you alluded to is people showed they cared.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the biggest thing.
The caring and the prayer is what, because you can't, if you feel sorry for yourself, no matter if it's cancer, stroke, anything, and you're not giving it to God and you're keeping it on yourself, you're not going to heal. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people disagree with me there, but they're not going to change my mind. But yeah, I mean, people behind you really helps. The support you get. really helps.
And then obviously Debbie helping with your granddaughter in the sense of you could not physically care for your granddaughter, but she was able to come
Yeah,
and
she
support.
could come and I had the support with her, And,
As well as going to appointments and
yeah.
just the general things of doing
During
life.
that whole time, we still had appointments for Willow, the 2-year-old, because she's under state custody, and we still had to take her to appointments because she has deficits and stuff that we need to work through.
And part of why I wanted to flush that out a little bit is it's really easy to forget some of those little details that when we go through difficulties, we're talking about a physical setback that you had with the stroke. There are basic things like going to a doctor appointment that is really hard.
Yeah, they're really extremely difficult to get loaded in the car, to get out of the car, to get, and then have 2 children on top of it. It was this wow. But we made it through it.
Well, and part of why I also wanted to talk about that is to give you an opportunity to share words of encouragement for anybody going through a difficult time right now, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, whether it's emotional, whether it's relational, financial, whatever it is. Do you have any words of encouragement for someone that is going through a difficult time?
It took me the proverbial 2x4 to get slapped in the head to understand, because I'm a very temperous person. I'm very irritable. But it took me God saying, okay, you're not in control. You just need to let me have it. And I just believe it's just trials we go through, and we're never alone in them. And if you get the mindset that you're not alone, that you can give it to God, you're still going to hurt. I still hurt. I still have my times where I can't walk. But I know God's with me. And you just have to have the faith to know that God's in control and we are not. And as once you give that over to God, it's a lot easier to deal with.
And your life, and you also testified to your son Roger, how we can have a situation, we can have a direction in life that we're going, and God can completely transform that. He can change us, and particularly, God can heal you completely from your stroke symptoms, but he can also heal us from our addictions, from our deficiencies, from our sinful inclinations. He can heal us from those types of things. And I think that's an encouraging thing to realize, that whatever we're going through, you said God's in control, so we don't have to worry, which might rub the doctors the wrong way.
Oh, it does. It makes them really irritable because you're not following their prescription. Well, I have a Christian counselor or a lady that does my counseling, and she's a Christian lady. She understands. But to tell my neurologist, who's foreign, he don't get it.
Yeah, and it's an opportunity for you to share the hope of Jesus that you have with that doctor.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I like to think about is how can I be a walking testimony for Jesus? And for someone who's like you, who's experienced a stroke, then just you being upright, you physically being able to walk, is a testimony to Jesus. And I think that's important, that we recognize that our lives can be that whether it's a doctor, whether it's a coworker, whether it's a neighbor, our lives can be a testimony to the power of Jesus in this world. Right. And so, well, I appreciate you taking time today to share with us and allow your story to impact others. And we talked about a lot of different things today, but is there anything else? I'd like to make sure I have an open-ended question in case there's anything else you'd like to share or anything you felt we missed.
I don't know. One thing I would like to say is, I'd just like to see a lot of the hate go away. The self-absorption of people. I know I get irritated back in March, part of the things that put me in the hospital was I was so irritated with the DHS system that Tom's way, their way, God's way, I wasn't giving it to God. I was holding on to it. And even in divorce, you don't have to leave that with hate. Me and my ex-wife are friends. I just like to see people just give away with that hate and just love each other. Put the past in the past and move on as a Christian person to the future.
That's a great reminder and a great challenge for us. And I think that's a great place to end. And thank you. Thank you. Was there anything else you'd like to share?
No, that's...
Well, thank you for sharing and being a guest on our podcast today. We appreciate you, Tom. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this podcast. Be on the lookout for how God does uncommon work in common life. And please subscribe to never miss an episode.